Somewhere between the tobacco fields of eastern Carolina and the Cape Fear River stood Hollowist Plantation, a place local records deliberately obscured for over a century. Between 1839 and 1857, 11 men vanished from its quarters without explanation. Authorities recorded nothing. Churches stayed silent. In 1856, a child was born at the plantation, drawing wealthy collectors from 3 states who arrived in secret with bags of gold coins they never acknowledged in their ledgers. The child's existence was hidden in falsified birth records, backdated contracts, and encrypted letters between prominent families uncovered only after a courthouse fire in 1923 exposed what an entire county had conspired to conceal. This is the story of Hollowist Plantation and the Vance family legacy, a tale of calculated horror enabled by the legal framework of slavery and the desperation of a man clinging to a fading empire. Hollowist Plantation spanned 470 acres in Dupont County, North Carolina, 7 miles south of where roads forked toward Wilmington and Raleigh. By 1839, the estate, once prosperous for 3 generations, had become a shadow of its former glory. The soil, exhausted by decades of tobacco farming, without crop rotation, yielded shrinking harvests each season. The house, a 3-story structure of cypress and brick, fired on site, faced east to capture the sunrise, a deliberate choice by its original builder, who believed morning light would bless the family with wealth. But by the time Nathaniel Vance inherited it in 1829 at age 37, those windows reflected only decay. Paint peeled from the columns, shutters hung loose on rusted hinges, and the formal gardens once tended by Nathaniel's grandmother surrendered to waist-high weeds by late summer. The barns leaned slightly, the stables housed fewer horses, and the fields stretched barren in patches where tobacco no longer took root. Nathaniel stood just under 6 feet with broad shoulders and thick hands that hinted at a youth of labor, though he had avoided it for decades. His dark hair at 47 was pomaded and combed with precision. He wore tailored coats from a Wilmington clothier, despite unpaid invoices piling up for 3 years. His boots were polished daily by Samuel, an enslaved man, one of the few Nathaniel had not sold to cover debts. In 1839, the plantation held 32 enslaved people, down from 87 5 years earlier. Families were torn apart, sold to plantations in eastern counties, textile mills in Raleigh, and shipyards in Wilmington, where strong backs were needed. Each sale brought temporary relief from creditors, but never enough. The Wilmington Merchant Bank held mortgages on the land and its people with interest, compounding quarterly, threatening to swallow everything. Nathaniel married twice. His first wife, Catherine, died in 1829, giving birth to their 3rd child, a son who survived only 4 days. His second wife, Margaret, from a wealthy Charleston family, married him in 1831, bringing a dowry that briefly stabilized finances. In 1827, she gave birth to Elizabeth during an ice storm that felled trees across 3 counties and killed livestock left unsheltered. Ruth Carver, a free woman of color and experienced midwife, noticed the infant was blind. Her eyes did not follow the candle flame or track movement Nathaniel paid. Ruth tripled her fee to sign a document declaring Elizabeth healthy and threatened her with ruin if she spoke of the child's condition. In a society where a free woman of color could lose everything for challenging a white man's reputation, Ruth took the money signed with an X and stayed silent. Margaret died 18 months later in 1829 from 40 drops of laudanum recorded as respiratory failure by Dr. Ephraim Stokes. She was buried in the family plot beneath a marker listing only her name and dates. Elizabeth grew up confined to the 2nd floor, navigating by touch and sound. Ada, an enslaved woman, cared for her, teaching her to count, recognize voices, and mark time by meals and the air's warmth through shuttered windows. By age 6, Nathaniel decided Elizabeth would learn only basic literacy. Ada carved raised letters into wooden blocks in secret, working by candlelight to teach her. The girl's world was 14 rooms, 1 hallway, and a narrow staircase she descended only when summoned. The plantation's decline accelerated. Nathaniel tried planting cotton, but the soil rejected it. He invested in turpentine, but the trees yielded little resin. He bred horses, but disease killed 7 of 12 in 1 summer. By 1838, he had sold nearly all valuables except the land and its people. He stopped attending church in 1837 after Reverend Thomas Gaines suggested financial ruin reflected moral failings. Nathaniel walked out mid-sermon and never returned. Though he paid late tithes to maintain appearances, neighbors ceased visiting, partly due to Nathaniel's temper and his habit of blaming bad luck, dishonest partners, or incompetent workers for his failures. Rumors spread about the locked second floor, a child some heard crying but never saw, and Margaret's suspicious death. By 1839, with Elizabeth nearing her teens, Nathaniel faced foreclosure within 18 months. In his study reviewing account books and drinking whiskey, he found a 1791 legal precedent in his father's papers. It detailed how children could be reclassified as property based on parentage documentation. In antebellum North Carolina, light-skinned enslaved children with European ancestry fetched premium prices as house servants or status symbols. A child born to a blind white woman with falsified records proving mixed parentage would be extraordinary. Nathaniel saw a way to save his estate through his daughter. He needed accomplices. Dr. Ephraim Stokes, a 56-year-old widowed physician in Kenansville, was drowning in debt from his late wife's illness. As county coroner, he could sign birth certificates without scrutiny. Nathaniel offered generous compensation for medical consultation. Stokes met him for 3 hours in the shuttered study, leaving with a $500 promissory note and legal documents outlining property classifications. Magistrate Calvin Pritchard, 48, and ambitious, presided over Dupin County recess legal matters from an office above a tobacco warehouse. His gambling debts in Wilmington gave Nathaniel leverage. Pritchard agreed for $800 and a promise to settle his debts. Thomas Harrington, a Wilmington broker, specialized in selling enslaved people to collectors in Louisiana, Charleston, and Virginia. He confirmed 3 buyers would pay $3,000 to $5,000 for a unique child, guaranteeing discretion. Nathaniel prepared Elizabeth, requiring her to dine downstairs weekly to accustom her to his authority. He spoke of family duty and the plantation's peril without specifics. He selected 11 enslaved men for their physical traits: height, light skin, and health. Jacob, 24, led field crews with mixed ancestry from a white overseer. Daniel, 19, worked in the stables with light eyes suggesting European heritage. Isaac, 22, a skilled carpenter, was quiet and observant. 8 others were chosen, all young and healthy. They were moved to the main house, given better food and lighter work. Others whispered of something ominous. The men sensed danger, but had no choice. Refusal meant punishment or sale. By 1843, the conspiracy was complete. Stokes would document Elizabeth's health. Pritchard prepared falsified records claiming Elizabeth was born to an enslaved woman Sarah Harrington cultivated. Buyers Nathaniel ensured silence through threats and payments. Elizabeth, unaware, continued her second-floor routine. Ada knew fragments from overheard conversations but feared speaking, facing sale to a turpentine camp where women rarely survived 2 years. In 1845, Elizabeth turned 18. Stokes certified her fit for pregnancy. Nathaniel executed his plan. The 11 men were coerced under threat of violence or sale. Elizabeth, blind and powerless, could not resist. Ada witnessed, but could not intervene. By July 1845, Elizabeth was pregnant. Nathaniel treated it as a business matter. Stokes monitored her. Pritchard finalized documents claiming Elizabeth was Sarah's daughter, ensuring the child would be enslaved. Harrington secured bids. In November 1845, Reverend Gaines visited unannounced, hearing Elizabeth was unwell. Nathaniel claimed she needed rest. Gaines left troubled but lacked authority to act. In March 1846, Elizabeth gave birth to a son, Thomas, after a 20-hour labor. The healthy child with mixed features was taken immediately. Elizabeth asked to hold him, but was refused. Ada watched her heart break. Stokes and Pritchard documented the birth, listing Sarah as the mother. The child was legally enslaved. Harrington brokered the sale. Charles Rutledge, a Louisiana planter, paid $4,700 in gold in April 1846. He collected unique acquisitions for his plantation. Nathaniel provided falsified documents. Rutledge examined Thomas, noting his health and features. The transaction was completed in 2 hours. Elizabeth heard the carriage leave. Ada told her the child was gone to Louisiana. Nathaniel paid the bank-saving Hollowist. The conspiracy left witnesses. Isaac attempted suicide in December 1846 and was sold to Virginia. Ada grew withdrawn, unable to bear her silence. Elizabeth's mental state collapsed by 1847. Stokes diagnosed hysteria, prescribing laudanum. Confining her, further Gaines visited again, speaking to Elizabeth, who revealed fragments of her confinement pregnancy and stolen child. Nathaniel dismissed her as delusional, citing Stokes. And Pritchard Gaines asked questions in Kenansville, learning of the bank's near foreclosure and Nathaniel's gold in 1846. Pritchard rebuffed him, warning against meddling. The conspirators, protected by greed and power, held firm. The 11 men were sold or fled during the Civil War. Isaac died in Virginia in 1851 under unclear circumstances. Ada cared for Elizabeth, who deteriorated further, rarely speaking or eating. Stokes died in 1854 of a stroke. Pritchard was killed in 1864 during a Union raid. Harrington went bankrupt after emancipation, dying in 1867. Elizabeth died in 1863 at 36, likely from starvation recorded as respiratory illness. Ada wrote in her letters, she chose release over suffering. Ada lived until 1882, haunted by her powerlessness. Nathaniel died in 1871 at 79 in his study, surrounded by account books. He faced no consequences, maintaining his status until the Civil War disrupted Plantation society. Hollowist operated modestly. Post-war Thomas' fate is unknown. He may have escaped during the war, died young, or lived, never knowing his origins. The plantation fell to ruins by the 1950s, its foundation barely standing. The truth emerged after a 1923 courthouse fire in Kenansville revealed 2 birth certificates for Elizabeth, one listing Nathaniel and Margaret as parents, the other, Sarah, an enslaved woman. Historian Harold Jensen investigated, finding the 1846 bill of sale for Thomas medical records by Stokes and Pritchard's suspicious registrations. In 1924, he published The Vance Family Mystery, suggesting documentary fraud. A 1931 diary from Gaines detailed his suspicions and Elizabeth's fragmented account. Ada's unsent letters, found in 1947, described the conspiracy in painful detail. Historians now accept Nathaniel exploited his daughter to sell her child as property using slavery's legal framework to save his estate. The case reveals how systems of oppression enabled atrocities. Elizabeth, blind and isolated, had no power to resist. The 11 men coerced under threat were victims too. Ada witnessed horror but faced death if she spoke. Thomas was born property because laws allowed it. How many similar stories remain hidden, their records burned or buried? The silence of Dupin County's powerful enabled Nathaniel Carr's plan. The horror lies not just in the act but in a community's complicity through greed, fear, and a system that valued humans as commodities.